Hello. Today, we are creating a new build that is a companion piece to another build that I worked on recently. Obviously, you saw the thumbnail. What you might not know is that I recently worked on a Hogwarts high school build. So, I spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours creating a massive castle that is meant to replace Copperdale High School, and it's functional. So if you haven't seen that yet, I will link it up here for you to check out. It'll also be at the end of the video if you want to check this out first. All right, let's get right into it. This is a pretty straightforward build, but I did also create all of the sub-venues for this lot. So if you download this auditorium, if you're interested in having a open air auditorium in your game, you can also experience the formal dance, career day, and graduation all in this lot. So what we are working on is just the basic structure. You can see it's pretty simple. There's not a whole lot going on here. There's not really a lot to a Quidditch field either. So it's pretty straightforward. The first thing that I realized I had to contend with is the fact that 45-degree angles in The Sims are much larger than 90-degree angles in The Sims. So the 45-degree angle towers that we have on the edge of the ring definitely look a little bit bigger than the 90-degree towers, but I think in the end, it ends up all kind of working out anyway. I also wanted this to be as functional as possible, so you can actually get to the top of the towers. Just based on the amount of space that I had here, there aren't any seats up there, but there are ladders that go up to the top, and you probably could fit one little seat up there if you wanted to for any kind of gameplay reason. But yeah, so we're just working on kind of the basic structure here, and I ended up using this wallpaper that I'm pretty sure is from Get Famous, if I remember right, because it really looked like kind of like wood paneling, like big wooden boards kind of assembled together. And as this build starts to come together, I think what you'll see is that, of course, it's not possible to really recreate the sort of fabric feeling of the towers from the actual Quidditch field. So I went in a little bit of an opposite direction where I wanted to create these in a way where you could kind of see the structures that were used to make the towers. And so I really leaned into using platform trims and friezes. I leaned into showing pillars around each of these big towers. And then you'll see the solution we end up with to create the checked pattern as well. It really kind of helps add a little bit of detail to a relatively simple structure, but also make it feel more like it was something that was built rather than a big tent tower, just because there's not a way that I could think of in The Sims to recreate that. So anyway, here we are. We have kind of the basic structure in place. We have our color-coded roofs are on, and now we're going to just do a little bit of terrain painting. More of this will come later, but we're going to just do a little bit more because as I was working on this, I felt like I really needed to have these super manicured stripes in the middle because, that just makes it feel like a Quidditch field. And then also I finally changed the lighting here too because, sorry, it probably was a little bit dark to see. But yeah, so here is a very bright view of where we're at. And you may have just noticed too that initially I had pillars that went from the first floor all the way up to the third floor. And I ultimately ended up changing this just for gameplay purposes. I realized that I put in very tall ladders from the first floor to the third floor, and then also very tall pillars initially. And then during gameplay, when the walls were down, it looked terrible. So I ended up changing that out just so it's a lot less distracting. And then here we are with the solution that I came up with for the checked pattern on the sides. So ultimately, the very simple solution was to utilize these curtains that are right in base game. So I think the hard thing in figuring this out was really just finding an object, first off, that could replicate a square, and second off, had all the applicable colors. And I think that these curtains from base game ended up working out kind of perfectly. And you can also see too that because to create the square, I have to use two curtains. So there's a line between them. You can also see some of the hardware on the side of the curtains. Ultimately, a little bit more structural than, like a large tent covering for a wooden structure, which is, what we see in the movies. But yeah, I think that this looks good, and I think that it works well for The Sims because, flat walls in real life look very different than they do in The Sims, and in The Sims, things can look a little bit flat, boring, what have you. And so I think it's important to add small details in whatever way you can. So I'm really happy with how this kind of solution came out. And I'm also happy that it's base game compatible. So, there are a lot of elements from different packs in this build, but I think the most quintessential and probably hard to replicate in The Sims is that checked pattern. And so I'm very happy that it ended up ultimately being base game compatible, because all the other stuff really could be replaced out if you don't have, like Get Famous for the walls, or if you don't have the werewolf pack for the pillars. Yeah, so pretty happy about that. For the Quidditch goals, we have just a big pillar with a round fountain on top of it. In gameplay, they do, do their fountain thing, so they're a little drippy, but I don't know, just maybe let's pretend that they're hexed or something like that to make the game more difficult. So that's the basic build. We got the bathrooms, we have the podium. I don't know, what are the other requirements for an auditorium? Not a lot, not much. So everything that you need for an auditorium is here. And something that I didn't end up recording is that the base of each of the 45-degree angle towers is actually a small locker room. So I put some lockers in there and I put some broomsticks and things like that because, I don't know, it just seems functional. It's a Quidditch field. There needs to be broomsticks somewhere. And then now we're going to get started on Career Day. So Career Day in the pack is a little... So I tried my best to think of some interesting ways that Career Day could be turned into an actual activity, or there could be some gameplay aspects to it. So the 3 careers that I chose to feature are Herbology, a herbologist, a Wandmaker, and then something that's more like an introduction to the magic realm. You'll see in a second or two, I put an actual portal to the magic realm in the middle of this Quidditch field for Career Day. And I guess the line of thinking I was going down was that, wouldn't it be cool if, your teen Sims, maybe they have a muggle parent and they have a magical parent, they go to Hogwarts and they're in their first year, and the first time that they ever go to the magic realm is during Career Day? I don't know. I just thought this cool, kind of like a rite of passage, right? You go to Career Day, you go to the magic realm for the first time. I think, if you apply some other Wizarding World term instead of saying Career Day, it makes sense. It makes sense with the world. So we have a magic realm on Career Day in the middle of this Quidditch field. So for the herbologist, we have a lot of different dangerous plants sitting around. We have a big cow plant there. And then for the Wandmaker, I thought it would be cool to put a table that's full of all of the different, not ingredients. What do you make? What are wands made with? Whatever wands you're made with, a table full of that. So I looked up what wands could be made of, and we have a collection of feathers that are displayed behind the table. We have coral, different types of woods, all that kind of stuff. I was really trying to think of ways that Career Day could be a little bit more functional and a little bit less of something you just go to. So I wanted to include, some storytelling elements to it. So hopefully you like how Career Day came out in this Quidditch field. Next, we're moving on to the graduation day. And for this one, I decided there's not a lot of requirements really for any of these sub-venues, but there's not a whole lot for graduation. It seems like it could be kind of facilitated in a lot of different ways. So what I chose to do was I took that checked pattern and I extended it down inside the field and created these little stations that maybe you would go hang out with your house on graduation day, and you would go hang out at the Slytherin table or the Hufflepuff table, the Ravenclaw table. And then I just kind of made the podium area a little bit more grand. I hung some curtains around. These statues, I think, ultimately end up being pulled just because they were obstructing pathways. But we have the house flags hanging up there. And then I also did this little custom chandelier. I had the idea of a big floating light source above the podium, which you'll see I also do a variation, or it's the same thing. I do the same thing for the formal dance as well. But yeah, that's the graduation sub-venue. Nothing to it. We got just some really beautiful lanterns sitting out there, chairs for everybody to sit, a little pathway, and then a really nice spot for the valedictorian to deliver their speech. And now we're moving on to formal dance. So formal dance. For this, so with the other 2 sub-venues, there weren't points of reference in the movies or the books or anything like that. For this, though, the first idea I had for the formal dance was to create the really beautiful wedding scene. One of the Weasley brothers, I'm forgetting his name. Damn. But the wedding scene inside that beautiful lavender tent. Such cool visuals for that whole segment of the film series. And so I wanted to create something like that. I wanted to create some type of tent or some sort of structure in the middle of the field that was kind of just magically floating there. So you see that I started kind of with this dome, this idea of a glass dome. Ultimately, I ended up scrapping that. And I also removed a lot of these floating curtains just because I was like moving my camera around a lot and it just seemed really busy. And, you know, during the formal dance, you want to see your Sims. So I ended up stripping it back, making something a little bit more simple. I added this magical platform in the center. Something that I'm always considering when I'm working on fan builds like this is I think it's important to acknowledge any sort of in-game associations with the concept. So here is an example. The Wizarding World of Harry Potter doesn't have this like big glowing magical portal anywhere, right? Like that's not a visual reference that I pulled from, but it is something that's significant to the Wizarding World in The Sims. It's significant to the Magic Realm in The Sims. I like the idea of tying concepts from the fan build, the fan world that I'm trying to replicate, and the in-game sort of variation of whatever that is. I think it just kind of helps it feel a little bit more blended into the world of The Sims 4 and a little bit more realistic to fit into this world. So yeah, that's the formal dance. And as this B-roll plays behind me here, we'll look at some shots of all the completed venues. You'll see that I updated the lighting for formal dance and for graduation during gameplay. So it felt more magical, more atmospheric, more, you know, world of Harry Potter. That is it. That is my open air. That's my, what am I calling this? Quidditch Field open air auditorium for The Sims 4 high school years. You know, before I started making videos on YouTube, I didn't realize how much time I would spend thinking of accurate titles that were both interesting but also reflective of what I was doing. The titles for these videos, they take me a minute to figure out. That, the captions, everything. Anyway, it is now available on the gallery if you would like to drop this in your game. And one thing I'll mention too, if you have not downloaded an Auditorium in the gallery yet, unfortunately, all of these sub-venues have to be uploaded separately. So I uploaded all 4 of these. They're all available on my catalog. So my name on the gallery is the same as it is here, which is just Patrick Creates. And just make sure if you're interested in this, you do have to download all 4 and place them all separately. If you download this lot and end up going to the Magic Realm on career day and something wild happens, I would also love to hear about that. If you would like to see more content like this, please feel free to subscribe. I am just getting started on YouTube. I don't have a ton of videos yet, but I'm having a really good time. And I love making fan builds like this. So if you want to see more, hit the subscribe button. I think that is all I have for today. Yeah, that's it. So until next time, y'all.